possible. So they created with engineering and systems a way to do that. But it's gotten out of hand. Basically, technology, they can't control it anymore. So the way they set it up, it's kind of running itself right now. And so now it's at the point where the things that we take in from social media is telling us, is telling our children what to think and how to think. And so I have the little clip art to the right where someone is like shopping through their phone. And how many times have you experienced yourself where you did a simple search? Maybe you wanted to buy a new vacuum, right? Or a certain brand of it, actually. And then all of a sudden you seeing a bunch of ads about vacuums, and then particularly that brand, all because you searched it one time. That is how the social media apps are working right now. That is how what they set up is how it works right now. And so if you could click to the next slide, Brooke, this is how it affects our children's mental health, because they're, especially with the influencer world right now, they're seeing things in its repetition, and they are being told, what to wear, how to look, and all those things through the social media, which is normal, right? Even if social media didn't exist, they would see it at the school. But because social media is such a mass, like it's across the whole world, like there's just almost no end to it. They're taking in so much more information. Where could I get the last few slides? Backwards. That. Back again. And again. Okay. Okay, and so the primary slogan with this documentary was, the technology that connects us controls us. So that was their slogan for that Netflix film. It was created with this intention at first for us to be able to connect on these platforms, right? Social networking, but now they control us. And so I do have on there John 8:36, which says, so if the Son sets you free, you'll be free indeed. And so that's referencing the freedom that we have in Christ, right? As we're living here. And then also our time after here. But that's that freedom that we have in every aspect, every area. So while this is saying that this thing is controlling us, we're not going to be in agreement with that, right? So we're going to be informed so that it does not control us. And same with our children. We're not, you would have to give up your power basically to it in order for it to control you. And so it doesn't have to be that way for us. We actually have the freedom in how we use social media and how our children use it. Okay, so in the next slide, I want to talk about social media as a stressor. So in the previous weeks, we talked about anxiety, we talked about depression, suicide, self-harm, and a lot of, for the main theme for all of those is that usually there's some stressor or trigger. And I briefly mentioned sometimes social media could be that stressor, that situation where something happens and now your child is feeling and experiencing something. And so the situation, the stressor is social media. The situation is maybe they're looking, they're scrolling through. Next slide, Brick. And so while they're scrolling through, they may catch themselves comparing themselves with others, right? And then once they see these things, next slide, Brick, they may begin to have thoughts as they're looking at it. Their thoughts are like, other people are better than me. People have better, they're having a better time than me. They're living better lives. Their life is so fun. Look at them and their family. And when your child is having those thoughts as they're scrolling through, next then comes the feelings with that thought. So on the next bubble, it'll talk about some of the feelings that they will have in connection to those thoughts. which now they're feeling sad. Now they're feeling low self-worth, low self-confidence. They may feel a little bit of jealousy while they're looking. So all of these are interconnected, and it all starts from a simple moment, a simple situation, simply scrolling through. So now that the thoughts have come up, it causes them to feel a certain way. And then next, we know that because of how we feel and the things that we're thinking, it affects our behavior, right? So they may then begin to avoid other people, right? So if they're feeling low self-worth, they may not be around others as much. Or you may notice that they're increasing their time on social media. They're spending a lot more time. And so usually for a lot of people, social media can become a coping mechanism where if they are feeling stressed, anxious, overwhelmed, depressed, they just, get on the phone, scroll through to distract. And so it's interesting because the very thing that may have triggered their uncomfortable or negative feeling or thought, it is also like what they're reaching to for their medicine. So in a similar way, like a substance, right? The thing that's dealing them their pain, that's what they're reaching for as well to feel better. And so they get stuck in a cycle with that, or they may start to display poor sleep patterns. And another thing that comes up with it, you'll see in the next bubble, is not just the behaviors, but the physical sensations. So I've mentioned this before, when it comes to teens, because they don't know how to communicate what they're feeling emotionally, a lot of times they may communicate through the physical sensations that comes with these negative thoughts and feelings. And so that could be a stomach ache, or they're feeling I'm just feeling tired. I don't feel like doing anything. Sleeplessness, they may have trouble falling asleep. So just that easily is how social media could be the situation that is the stressor or the trigger for your child, causing these mental health challenges. And so in the next one is where we get into the so for the sake of time, I will skip over the next few slides. So I did come up with other situations, which is like FOMO, and then that's the fear of missing out. They could feel that while they're looking at social media. I also wanted to mention cyberbullying, but I won't go into it. That's another thing that they could experience on there. People could be very mean on there. And then fake news. I think Jerome, did I get your name right? Hit it on the nail with that one. Some of the stuff that they saying out there, So really quickly before I do go over, I do want to sit on fake news, because even as adults, right, we take in these things and respond to them the same way our children might. In 2020, can anyone remember what it was that everyone was buying up because of what they saw being portrayed on social media? Does anybody remember what was out of stock and hard?
Water.
Oh, water. And it was something else. It was something else because water is a smart thing to go out of stock with what was happening. But it was something else where it was like, out of all things, why that? Does anybody remember? Or I don't know if maybe that was just coming up on my social media feed and things that I was seeing. Does anybody remember what was everybody buying up?
Oh yeah, disinfectants. That's what it was.
They were buying up. It was a lot of things out of stock. The food was out of stock too at some of the stores I was going to. Yes, toilet paper. People were buying up toilet paper, and they were out of stock in stores, and it was all over the social media of people having these big, stockpiles of toilet paper. Now, what was it that, caused these people to want, but people were seeing stuff, and then they were seeing other people doing it, and then they were going out, all because of what they, so it even affects us adults. So imagine the children, imagine the teens. Okay, so I want to move on to the next slide. And you can keep going until we get to the 4 instructions. Oh, okay. So since we talked about depression and anxiety last week, I won't go into this too much, but some of the symptoms that could arise from their social media use are symptoms of depression, right? From the thought, my friends are having fun without me, now I feel sad. Now I'm sleeping a lot more because I'm fatigued and I'm isolating myself. Anxiety, I may feel like, okay, what if I don't get enough likes when I post something? So you may notice they're really worried about that. Constantly checking it to see. It could also trigger eating disorders, right? So if they're seeing how everyone on there is looking, they may have those thoughts. I need to be skinny, curvy, or fit like this person. That could then begin to present behaviors through their eating patterns, or you will probably notice some significant weight loss or weight gain, right? In this distorted perception of their body shape and size. And then also in the next slide, I also talked about body dysmorphia, right? It can trigger that. So my ears are so big is, what I used as a quoted example, because it could really cause people to become preoccupied with something that other people don't see. And sometimes it is because somebody made a comment, right? Somebody said, oh my gosh, look at her ears, are so big. And they never heard that any other time throughout their life, probably. And now they're staring at their ears, thinking something's wrong with their ears, but nobody else knows it. So that's a way like body dysmorphia could then become present for them. And so then now we do know about the body alterations that people are making today. It's a lot more common. So then it could lead them down that line of thinking like, I need to undergo this type of surgery and change this thing about myself, or just repetitive grooming and checking themselves in mirror to see that something that's bugging them and on their mind is okay, like maybe skin picking, but it's like no one else notices this thing, or if they do, it's very minute. And then I think there was one more, addictive behavior. So we already know that social media is addictive. I already explained how the creators themselves said the goal was to keep people on the app as long as possible. So that's part of the reason why it's addictive. So they may think they're doing just one more scroll, but one more scroll turns into one more hour. So now their social media use is increased, and they're unable to be like away from their phone. If you notice, I know when social media first came out, there you could scroll all the way up until you saw all of the posts. But now there's no end to the social media feeds. There's no end to the scrolling. So because the goal is to keep them on. And so it is addictive. It gives them a bit of a dopamine rush each time that they're about to scroll up and see another post, another upload. And then dysregulated sleep patterns, because whatever they're seeing on social media could remain on their mind. Now they're ruminating about something they saw, and it's keeping them up. Or they're up not just because it's on their mind, but they're up because they're on social media. So it could really mess up their sleep patterns. Okay, so now we're getting to the instructions. These are instructions for your child. So again, this series is called Raising Emotionally Healthy Children. And the overall scripture for this was about training up a child in the way that they should go. So in order to train your child as it pertains to social media, here are the four instructions I suggest that you speak with them about. Speak with them about being intentional, protecting their privacy, being present, and also testing their sources of validation. So if you can go to the next one, Brick, I would quickly explain what I mean about intentional. So when it comes to social media, because of how they set up the algorithm of it all, your child needs to identify how they plan to use it. They need to be intentional about using it. I actually had a scripture come to mind with this, which was 1 Peter 5:8-9. It says, be alert and of sober mind, right? A lot of times when we're on social media, we're not alert. We're pretty idle-minded a lot of times. And so your child could just be scrolling through, maybe they're nothing to do at the moment, and they're not actually intentionally using it. So they're taking in all the information that's just thrown to them. And at that point, yes, the app is feeding them whatever, right? Rather than them controlling the app. So they need to be intentional about how they use it. They need to know that they choose what they post and what they share. They also choose what they want to engage or not engage with. And so that's how the app works. If you click and like a post about crab, guess what's gonna be all you see on that social media platform now? Crab. You're gonna see a bunch of posts about crab coming. That's how it works. And it's not even so. Let them know every single click, every single like, every single thumbs up, every single double tap, every single, even if they linger just a little bit too long, the app is gathering information about them. That app is learning the ins and outs of your child. So your child that's why they need to be intentional about how they use it, because they can have it so that the app maybe only shows encouraging posts that motivate them. If there's something they're particularly passionate about, it could be, okay, I want to make sure that my social media is only about painting or art or whatever, or sports, or they need to tell the app what to show them versus the app just taking information from them that they don't realize they're giving out by every click, every linger, every comment. They can control it by being intentional. So, and then when I talk about the privacy, that's self-explanatory, right? Make sure that they know that, they never share any personal information on there. Nothing should be asked for, no numbers, no names, none of that. All that information does not need to be shared. Another thing they can do to help their privacy is set their pages to private. When they post things, make sure what's in the background is nothing that gives away like their location, nothing that gives away too much information. I know some people may have their home in the background, or just even their street, and it's like you can look at it and you're like, I know exactly where that is. So talk to them about these things, like just the importance of keeping those things private. And then be aware, this is extremely important, be aware of the location access that some of these apps have for your child, right? So um, you need to make sure that your child has gone into the settings of each of their apps to make sure that the location access is off. Otherwise, the app knows where you are and they use that information as well. But in some apps, people can know where you are, particularly in the Snapchat app. If your location is on Snapchat, I can see exactly where you are. So make sure your child knows about privacy when it comes to using social media. And then what I mean by reality and being present is social media is a virtual world. So it's not real. Yes, there are some for some of the accounts, real people behind the accounts, but it's not real. Those people don't really know you. You don't really know them. And it does not truly reflect their actual life. Now, if you want to have a talk with your child about, hey, make sure it does reflect your actual life. So, only being friends with people you know in real life on there, so that their virtual world does mirror their reality, their real world, you can do that. But for the most part, a lot of the kids on there are probably following or being followed by or have friends with people that they've never met. So what they see on there, or something someone may say that's mean, they can sometimes confuse that with their actual reality. So make sure that they don't forget about their real life relationships and experiences and friendships, that they continue to invest in those and not get sucked into this virtual world and getting confused by that. And then encouraging them to practice gratitude about their actual life, so they're not seeing things on social media and posts from other people thinking like, oh, I want my life to be like theirs, my life is boring. Be grounded and present on what your actual real life is and the blessings that are presently in your real life. And so then lastly, the instruction about testing the validity is just making sure that they know the like system, the thumbs up, all of that is not an accurate measure of their value. Making sure that they don't end up receiving their value from those things. And because the social media thing is very wishy-washy, right? People will like something one day and they won't like it the next day. And so make sure that your child's identity is grounded, right? And for those of us who are believers and believe in Christ, make sure their identity is grounded in Christ, that they're not letting the likes decide their value. They're not letting the amount of followers or friends on these platforms decide their value. And then also encouraging them to acknowledge their actual real life support, again, family and friends, because those those relationships are a more accurate um, measure of who they are, because these are people that actually know them, and they probably have given access to speak into their lives and share with them and talk with them about who they actually are and the blessing that they are. So make sure that they check where their validation is coming from if they are going to be using the apps. And then as for you guys as parents, because I like to give what you guys could talk with your kids about, but then also instructions for you guys as parents. On the next slide is to know your teen, right? And in order to know, if once you know your teen, you can then create structure with them around their social media use and then commit to the structure. So with knowing your team, what I mean is same way that you would probably be curious about who their friends are and acquaintances are in their real life. On the next slide, on the next few slides, I think I explained this a little bit more. So the same way that you would be curious of who their friends are in real life, you need to also have a conversation. Make sure you're up to date with like, okay, who are your friends on these apps? Who are your friends in this virtual world? I do want to know who you are engaging with, right? Who you're interacting with, whose information you're taking in, all of that. And then also, what accounts do they have? Do they have Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat? What do they have? Because you'd be surprised. Kids will have these accounts and parents have no idea that they have them and that they're on there and what they're on there sharing or receiving. So also know what accounts your child is using, and then kind of get to know how they use it, right? Some children are using it particularly for a specific reason of like, oh, I use this to stay updated with like sports stuff. And you may find out that is actually how they use it. Some children are probably using it to stay connected with friends after school or outside of school hours. Okay, so also get to know how your child uses it and then create structure. So a few bullet points with creating the structure is there's such things as the time control. So you can probably do that with your child to begin to help them be disciplined and being able to get off the app and focus on other things they got to focus on, or spend time to other things they got to give time to. Make sure the restrictions are age appropriate though, because you can set the phones to turn or the apps to turn off. However, it would be pretty hard to, it would be pretty, what's the word? Make sure the age appropriate, as in, if your child is a teenager or in high school, then you probably wouldn't have their apps turned off at 7 p.m. That might be a little bit too early, right? You may give them a little bit more time, maybe 10 or something. So make sure it's age appropriate, nothing too restrictive, and then communicate the rules. So I don't suggest that you just go ahead and set the controls without telling them. That would be a quick way to get your team not trust you. So you do want to communicate whatever parameters you're going to set, and communicate them as well so that they can know what's going on. Communicate it to them. I always suggest when I work with parents and teens, I always suggest if you're implementing any rules, do as best as you can those things that are concerning them. Try and get them involved on what you're deciding, right? So you may actually pull them in on the conversation like, hey, let's talk about social media. There's some things I've learned, and I just want to make sure that, it remains a healthy tool for you. And so one of those things is setting up a time control, because I notice, you spend a lot of time on it, or, or doing this and that. And so if we are setting a time control, what time do you think would be a reasonable time for you to get off, right? And so if you actually engage them on setting those structures, and you get their yes, or you get them to say like, okay, 10 o'clock, they're probably more likely to abide by it, because one, you've included them in it, and also they to some extent feel like they had a say in it. They were the ones that suggested it or verbally agreed to it without it just being done for them, without considering how they felt or they thought about it. So as teens, at that teen age, they are mature enough to be able to engage in that conversation with you and collaboratively decide some of these structures. So that would be the best route and probably most healthy route as far as approaching creating the structure with them, especially if there's not any parameters they have now, you know? So that would be a good approach. Now, committing to the structure is important. Um, Teens, children, they need consistency. Also, because if you say something one day and, it's like, okay, get off at 10 o'clock tonight, today, but then the next day, there's some days they're on there after 10 and you don't say nothing. That inconsistency is really going to undermine the structure that you intended to set. They need to have it where it is constant so that they already know what it is. There's no surprise, there's no shock, there's no feeling of, well, the other day you let me. It needs to be consistent across the board. Also model that self-control for yourself. So if you are having them set disciplines around their social media use, but they don't observe that you seem disciplined with how you're using yours, either maybe not even social media, but like your phone or then they're probably less likely to feel like not that they want to follow through, but they're probably less likely to feel like it's reachable to follow through, because they're probably feeling, well, you're setting a standard for me that you yourself is not even holding. So to the best of your ability, whatever structure you set for them, consider also applying a similar or same structure for yourself to model that for them and with them. If you're doing it with them, there'll probably be a much more likely buy-in from them. And then I mentioned consistency. However, you are able to evaluate and adjust your permissions. And this is based on how you observe your child's use of these things and its impact on your child. So if you're noticing, okay, they've been pretty responsible with it, or my child has a pretty solid self-esteem, they know who they are, right? Again, this goes back to the knowing your teen. Then you can begin to adjust certain restrictions or structures that you did put in place. Or on the flip, if you notice, like, okay, some of these things that I have allowed or permitted, maybe we need to get back to the drawing board, because I see it's still impacting you in this way, or you're still not able to focus, or so you may even add to the structure. So it is always able to be adjusted, but just make sure the reasons are consistent. And when you do implement, it's consistent until you do, sit with them again to reevaluate. So with that, I will open it up for any questions, any thoughts, comments. This is the time for that. Thank you guys so much for your patience on tonight.
Yes, thank you guys for your patience and the technical difficulties, but I captured a whole lot of information, excuse me. Any questions?
I don't really have a question, but I do have a comment. This is so crazy because I am substitute counseling, and I had a student come in today stressed out because he has a community that he's involved with on in discourse, I think it is. And this one of the friends, and he considers these people as his friend. He's never met them, but he considers them as his really good friends. And one of the guys, who's like about 17 or something, he started talking. He's 18, so he can, I thought it was really, I don't know, I don't want to say interesting, but I was amazed that he really considered these people as his friend, and he had never met them.
Yeah.
So is that common in that?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, for the children, yes. So that's why I think as adults, it's easy for us to separate, right? We're like, we don't know those people, But as kids, they really get so immersed where they are convinced that they do know these people, especially if they've been in connection with these people for quite some time. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why one of the instructions is like, make sure you talk to them about remaining grounded within their reality. Like, these are your real people, your real friends, your real family member. Like, these are the people that you actually know in real life. Those people you don't know and they don't know you. Like, even though there's like this pseudo relationship, what you shared also made me think of something that's also very common, not just the social medias, but actually within the gaming world.
Mm-hmm.
It's very,
Yes.
a lot of children meet some of the people that they consider their friends with through the gaming world, people that they game with, like they play a game or join in on a video game with. They never met them, but they play video games together all the time. And a lot of times get on at a regular time. It's like a part of their routine. So they do, because they're technically hanging out with these people.
Mm-hmm.
They're engaging in
Yes.
activity together. So yes, adolescents begin to believe these people are their friends, and they've never met them though.
Mm,
Yeah.
So it is,
yeah.
it is.
That was that was
Unfortunately.
kind of scary to me.
It
Mm-hmm.
is. But I know I saw some statistics that for this generation, it's becoming more of a comfort for them to develop relationships in that
Mm-hmm.
way. They don't want to engage in the things, the interpersonal things with meeting up with people, having phone conversations with people. It's really going to what the shift is text messages or things that are just really just at a distance. It's becoming more of a comfort level with them when it comes to engaging with others.
Yeah. And,
Scary.
yeah, and that's where you may notice that all these friends virtually, and you never see them hang out with nobody. You never see them go. Like, you may wonder where, you don't ever want to go hang out with some of your friends at school. They're not making friends there. They've got their friends already in this virtual world, and they spend a lot of time there. So that's that
Yeah,
social
and he
that you
was
may.
saying that he couldn't get off. I was
Mhm.
like, "What do you mean you can't get off? Just don't go on the site, you know?" And
Mhm.
apparently he has so many friends on the
Mhm.
site, and everybody is agreeing with him, saying they don't want this guy on there. But he's saying, he can't get off, I guess, because of his friends. I
Mhm.
don't know. Just
Yeah, that
weird.
that's the FOMO, the fear of missing out.
Uh-huh.
He's gotten to know them, so now it's like, I gotta stay on there because I need to still be in the know. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so you can imagine the social skills being impacted for this
heavily.
generation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This kid was almost in tears, and he's like 18 and a half.
Mm,
He was really, really worried, stressed out. I mean, just going through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah. I'm finding that more often, even when I'm providing therapy to clients, whether that's the adolescents, I'm finding that more often. Also, I have parents that are just like, why is this? Why is this person so attached and they can't leave the game? They can't leave this system. So I will say, Stephanie, I have been hearing about it more often.
Yeah. Brooke,
Yeah,
you.
and we had the sheriffs referred him to the FBI because this is beyond, because he's an adult. He's an
Mhm.
adult. It can't be, one of the children's agencies that deal with cybersecurity and all that.
Mhm.
Because he is an adult, they had to refer him to the FBI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then that goes with the safety and the privacies, the
Mhm.
protecting all of that, because there are people on there engaging in that type of thing and having these conversations or interactions with our kids, our children, and sharing these things with them that they don't need to know about or be involved with or aware of. And then Brooke, you mentioned something that it brought up a good point. Oh.
Was it regarding, I had mentioned how parents are, I have clients where they're with parents as far as like the parents are like in shock as to why their
Yeah.
child cannot break away.
Yeah, yeah. So, that piece. Um, a lot of times it is hard for the adult to understand the difficulty for the child to just get off and disconnect. And so I think, this conversation we're having now of like, actually, they do truly begin to believe that these people are their friends, or that if they get off, they're missing out on something. Having the conversation will help you have a level of understanding when you do approach your child and have these conversations with them. And if they do respond in a way of like, it's hard to get off, because if you can meet them where they're at, of like, I get it, like you've been interacting with these people for months or for years, or so you develop a level of relationship with them, right? So you can validate that piece and let them know, you can understand with that information why they feel like they can't just get off. But I see that where the kid is having a hard time getting off, not only because they've created these virtual relationships, but also there are some real relationships. Like, there are some people on there that they have real relationships with.
Mhm.
And so a lot of times when, as adults, we jump to like, okay, we see this is a problem for you or causing problems in your life, you need to get off. Soon as we do that, you completely strip them of what they feel like is one of their social sources. So if they do have their friends, even their real friends on there, that's really going to be detrimental to them for it to just be stripped away from them. So that's why I do say, if you can, invite them in on that conversation you have with them about setting the structure, so that they know why and they know the progression and what's going to go on. But I know when parents find out about certain things, or they learn about how social media actually is impacting their child, the temptation is to jump to like, okay, well, let's just move what the issue is. Let's just remove what the issue is. Then they strip it away, and now the child is depressed. Now we got an additional challenge going on for the child, because that was their source of social life.
Yeah. And that reminded me, Tajale and Stephanie, what you guys mentioned. It brought me back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And one of those things is a sense of belonging. And, with adolescents during that stage, they're trying to find their identity, and their peers are their most important influence. So if they're finding their peers or their sense of belonging on social media or on the video, that's what it means for them, even though it's like, this looks crazy. This is weird, like, what's going on here? It's feeling that need for an identity or a community for them. So that's why it feels so real. And then even on social media, the way that social media is designed, if I post something, you have the option to like, heart it, comment. So people are sometimes seeking validation or a sense of belonging from there, even though it's a void or empty sense of validation, because you're going to constantly search for that next validation, but really it's filling that void for a sense of belonging.
Mm-hmm. I know we're at 7:20, so I know this is usually from 6 to 7. So if anyone has to go, you can definitely just go ahead and log out for tonight, and we'll wish you a good night. But for those who still have thoughts or questions, me and Brooke are able to stay to finish the discussion. I have a question for you, Brooke, that I think that your answer could be helpful to those that are in the room with us. Brooke you just put in the, okay, yes. So Brooke just put in the chat, next week will be about grief and loss. So when our children have experienced grief because of the loss of something or someone, that will be next week's topic. I have a quick question, Brooke. You mentioned about you mentioned that stage that they're in. They're wanting to be a part. They're wanting to fit in, right?
Mm-hmm.
For those kids that found it through virtual community, how could the parents encourage them to build that in their real life? Since that is important.
Yes. So it's important for parents to be active in searching or helping to search for a community with their children. So for example, it is huge if parents are in the faith, they're attending church, if the youth group is at the church, getting the child involved in the youth group at the church, putting them in atmospheres where they're able to interact with the youth their age and also formulate a community, because it's going to be hard to break that child away from that addiction or what that sense of belonging is to that virtual reality. It's almost like if you break them away, you're going to have to replace it with something else. So it's good to have those conversations, but it's important that it's replaced. If the neighborhood kids are pretty good kids, talk to the other parents, see if something can be set up where they do play outside or engage in different activities. So basically there would have to be a replacement of the community. I mean, talks are good, but the child would essentially would have to formulate new relationships.
That's good. So there's an active part on the parents. So there's an active part on the parents. So there's an active part. Yeah, there's an active part on the parents' part side where a parent would have to do something in order for the child to cultivate and kind of grow these real life communities. Versus, just telling them get off of there, and then now they don't know who they're gonna be their friend still. So as a parent, helping them to create and get involved in those communities is what I heard you say, Britt.
Especially at those teenage age, because they're getting to the point where they're getting into or going into adulthood, and after that, right, whatever they've been instilled, God pray for them, as they go on. So it is so important that parents stand firm, be the active party in that, with helping their teens to basically engage with more positive peer influences, real relationships. So parents do play an active role. Rather than talking, try to create that environment for the child, or encourage them to do it, because once they grow older, it's a little tougher, or a lot tougher.
So raise them while you can.
I love it. Raise them while you can.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Stephanie, those are great. All right.
Well, these sessions are great. It has it's helped me tremendously it just recently, because I just went back to work. And last week you were talking about the suicide I had. That was my first day. That was my first day in the office. A kid came in. Yes. And so, and a lot of what you had spoke about was like asking the questions, becoming involved in the conversation with them, and I was able to do that because of what I heard you say. I was able to ask them, are you self-harming? What are you doing exactly? All of those questions. And do you have a plan? And, all of those things. I was able to do that. I mean, I knew some things, but I didn't feel that comfortable with it until you made sense when you said, when you start asking the questions, it's better to ask them the questions, than to just let it just go. As a matter of fact, if they're reaching out like that, I think it made them feel even more comfortable to be able to.